You think you know your family, until they start planning your funeral, while you're still alive. They cried over my coffin. They hugged each other. Some of them even smiled. But what they didn't know, I was watching everything. Before I begin, let me say this quietly. If you've ever been hurt by the people you trusted the most, stay with me till the end. And tell me in the comments later, what would you have done in my place? My name is Margaret. I'm 72 years old. For most of my life, I was proud of one thing above all else: my family. I was a wife before I was anything else. A mother before I was my own person. I believed love meant sacrifice. And sacrifice would always be returned. I was wrong. After my husband passed away, the house became too quiet. Not peaceful. Heavy. He left everything to me. The house, the savings, the accounts. We earned it together, so it made sense. But that's when the way my family looked at me changed. Not overnight. Slowly. My son started visiting more often. But he never asked how I was feeling. He asked questions instead. How's the paperwork? Have you updated the will? Are the accounts still in your name? My daughter-in-law smiled while listening. But her eyes were always watching me. At dinner, conversations stopped when I entered the room. Phones went silent. Laughter ended. Once late at night I heard my son whisper. He thought I was asleep. When she's gone, everything will finally be ours. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my heart beating so loud. I was sure he could hear it. That was the night I realized something painful. I wasn't their mother anymore. I was an obstacle. I wanted to believe I was imagining things. I wanted to believe family would never cross that line. But deep down I felt it. Something dark was already moving toward me. And I had no idea how far they were willing to go. After that night I started paying attention. Not the kind of attention that panics, but the kind that listens. My son suddenly insisted on taking me to doctor appointments. He said it was for my safety. My daughter-in-law chose the clinic. She filled out the forms. She spoke before I could. Her memory hasn't been great lately, she told the doctor, smiling. I sat there confused. No one had ever said that to me before. The doctor nodded and wrote something down. A week later, new medications appeared on my kitchen counter. Small white pills. Soft blue ones. Just to help you rest, my son said. Doctor's orders. First I trusted them. Why wouldn't I? They were my family. But after a few days something felt wrong. I was tired all the time. My hands shook. Sometimes I'd forget simple words. Not because I couldn't remember, but because my head felt heavy. One afternoon I heard my daughter-in-law on the phone in the hallway. She didn't know I was standing behind the door. Yes, she's weaker now. No, she suspects nothing. Just a little more time. My heart dropped. That night I didn't take the pills. The next morning I felt clearer, stronger. That's when fear replaced doubt. I called an old friend of mine, Helen. She used to be a nurse. She came over quietly like we were doing something wrong. I handed her the pill bottles. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at the labels. Then she looked at me and whispered, "Margaret, these aren't for what they told you." She explained everything in a calm voice, but each word felt like a knife. The dosage, the combination. These would slowly make you dependent, she said. Confused. Easier to control. I felt my chest tighten. So they're not trying to help me? Yes. Helen shook her head. No, she said softly. They're trying to make decisions for you. Because they don't believe you'll be around much longer. That night I sat alone in my bedroom. I thought about every sacrifice I'd ever made. Every meal I skipped so my son could eat more. Every dream I gave up for my family. And this is where it led. I didn't cry. Got quiet. Because when fear turns into clarity, you stop reacting. And you start planning. I stopped taking the pills completely. I pretended nothing had changed. I smiled at dinner. I nodded when they spoke. And I listened. Because I knew one thing for certain now. They weren't waiting for me to die. They were preparing for it. And they were already deciding what to do with everything I left behind. What they didn't know yet was that I had stopped being their victim. And in the next part, I'll tell you about the room my husband built years ago. The one that was never meant to be found. The room that would save my life. My husband was a careful man. The kind who believed you should always have one door no one else knows about. Years ago, while renovating the basement, he built a small room behind the storage wall. At the time I laughed. "What are you hiding from?" asked him. He smiled and said, "Not hiding, preparing." After his death, I almost forgot that room existed. Till now. That night, I went down to the basement alone. I moved the old boxes, pushed the loose panel, and there it was. A narrow space. No windows. Just enough room for a chair, a small bed, and a hidden camera system my husband never removed. I sat there for a long time, not scared, thinking. The next day I called Helen again. Then I called a lawyer my husband once trusted. Quietly, carefully. Every conversation was documented. Every prescription photographed. Every strange comment written down. We didn't confront my family. We let them continue. Because when people think they've already won, they make mistakes. A week later my son sat me down. "Mom," he said gently, "the doctor thinks it's time you rest more. You've been getting confused." My daughter-in-law squeezed my hand. "We'll take care of everything," she said. "You don't need to worry anymore." I looked at them and smiled. "Okay," I said. That smile convinced them. They moved fast after that. A different doctor. A rushed hospital visit. Paperwork I was told not to read. And then, they announced it. She passed peacefully in her sleep. My name was posted online. Condolences poured in. And while the world believed I was gone, I was in the hidden room. Alive. Listening. Watching. They cried in public. They hugged neighbors. They accepted sympathy. But at night, they laughed. They talked freely. About money. About the house. About who deserved what. I recorded everything. Every word. Because the truth has a way of becoming loud. When it's finally played back. And in the next part, I'll tell you what it felt like. To watch my own funeral. And hear the things my family thought I would never hear. The day of my funeral arrived quietly. No thunder. No warning. Just a black car pulling into the driveway. And strangers carrying a coffin with my name on it. From the hidden room, I watched the live feed my husband had once set up. A single camera angle. That was all it took. My photo stood at the front of the room. Smiling. Alive in a way I no longer felt. People whispered kind words about me. She was such a good woman. Always gave, never complained. My daughter cried the loudest. Her shoulders shook. Her voice broke. But there were no tears. My son stood beside her, one hand on her back, accepting sympathy like it was a reward. I waited for something. A crack in their act. A moment of guilt. Never came. After the service, everyone returned to my house. My house. The same walls where I raised my child. The same table where we shared meals. They didn't wait long. Once the door closed, the voices changed. Laughter replaced whispers. "I can't believe it's finally over," my daughter-in-law said. "She lived longer than I expected." My son replied. That sentence broke me. They poured drinks. Sat on my furniture. Started dividing my life like a list. "I'll take the savings. The house should be mine. Sell the rest." Not once did they say my name. Not once did they pause. I realized something then. They weren't pretending to be relieved. They were relieved. I pressed my hand against my mouth to keep from making a sound. My chest burned. Not from anger. From understanding. I had loved people who were already planning a future without me. I stayed there for hours, watching them celebrate my death, recording everything. Because while they believed the story was over, it was only beginning. And in the next part, I'll tell you how they walked into the lawyer's office, confident and smiling, believing everything I owned already belonged to them. A week after the funeral, my family walked into the lawyer's office dressed in confidence. Black clothes were gone. Faces were relaxed. Grief has an expiration date. When money is waiting on the other side. From the hidden room I watched the live feed again. Different camera. Same truth. My son sat back in his chair like the outcome was already decided. My daughter-in-law held a folder, ready to correct anyone who slowed things down. The lawyer cleared his throat. Before we begin, he said, I need to confirm that everyone understands. This will is legally binding. They nodded. Too quickly. The lawyer opened the document. Margaret left clear instructions, he continued. Very clear. My daughter-in-law smiled. Then the lawyer said something. That wiped the smile off her face. All assets are to be held temporarily. No distribution will happen today. My son leaned forward. What do you mean temporarily? He asked. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. There is a condition. Silence filled the room. A recorded statement must be played before any decisions are made. My heart started pounding. The lawyer pressed a button. The screen lit up. And there I was, live, breathing, looking straight into the camera. My voice filled the room. If you're watching this, I said calmly, it means you believe I'm dead. My daughter-in-law stood up so fast. Her chair fell backward. My son's face drained of color. But I'm not, my voice continued. And if you're sitting in that room, it means you did exactly what I feared. The recording went on. Every pill bottle, every whisper, every sentence spoken after my funeral, their own voices played back to them. Clear, undeniable. The lawyer paused the video. At this point, he said, I've been instructed to contact the authorities. Panic replaced confidence. My son started shouting. My daughter-in-law started crying. But it was too late. Because the door opened. And this time, I walked in. Live, standing, watching them finally understand that the woman they tried to erase was now standing right in front of them. And in the next part, I'll tell you what happened. When the police began asking questions, they couldn't answer. The room went completely silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence, the kind that presses on your chest and makes it hard to breathe. My son stared at me like he was looking at a ghost that refused to disappear. My daughter-in-law started shaking her head. This isn't real, she whispered. This can't be real. 2 police officers stepped inside the office. Professional. One of them spoke first. We're here to ask a few questions about a reported false death and possible financial exploitation. My son tried to laugh. Came out wrong. There must be some mistake, he said. She's confused, she hasn't been well. I looked straight at him. For the first time in years. I didn't look away. I'm very well, I said quietly. The officers asked them to sit down. They didn't give them a choice. Questions followed. About the doctor. About the medications. About the funeral paperwork. Every answer they gave was already waiting for them. Inside my evidence folder. When the officer asked, did you believe she was dead when you planned the funeral? My daughter-in-law broke down. She cried loudly. Missy, desperate. We were just trying to help, she said. She didn't need all that money anyway. That sentence hurt more than anything else. Not because of the money, but because of how easily they erased my worth. The officers exchanged a look. One of them nodded. Ma'am, he said to me, you did the right thing. Coming forward. My son stood up suddenly. You ruined everything, he shouted at me. We're your family. I didn't raise my voice. I said. Until you decided I was easier to bury than to respect. They were escorted out of the office separately. No shouting. No drama. Just consequences. When the door closed behind them, the room felt lighter. The lawyer turned to me. "What would you like to do next?" he asked. Thought about it. Not for long. "I want my life back," I said. "And I want my future protected. Because survival isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of the part where you choose yourself. And in the next part, I'll tell you what happened after the truth went public, and how the world reacted when they learned I was never dead at all." The story didn't stay quiet. By the next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Neighbors, distant relatives, people who hadn't spoken to me in years, they all said the same thing. "We thought you were gone. We saw the funeral. How is this even possible?" The police report became public. Then the recordings did. Not all of them. Just enough. Enough for the truth to breathe. The same family that once praised my son now whispered his name with disbelief. How could he do that to his own mother? The house felt different. Not empty anymore. Free. For the first time since my husband died. I slept through the night. No footsteps outside my door. No voices planning around me. Just silence. And peace. A few days later I received a letter. Handwritten. From my son. He didn't apologize. He blamed. "You embarrassed us. You destroyed the family. You should have handled this privately." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. Some words don't deserve answers. The lawyer called later that afternoon. "All assets are secure," he said. "They won't be able to touch anything." Thanked him. Then I did something I had never done before. I made a new will. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. I left portions to charity. To people who helped me survive. To causes my husband cared about. And for my son, I left him a letter. Not to punish him, but to tell the truth. Because some lessons only arrive when everything else is taken away. And in the next part, I'll tell you what happened when he finally read that letter, and how I chose what kind of ending this story would have. Took him 3 weeks to finally open the letter. I know because the lawyer called me the same afternoon. "He read it," he said quietly. "He didn't say much, but he asked if you were willing to meet." I didn't answer right away. Not because I was afraid, but because for the first time in my life, had a choice. I agreed to meet him. In a public place. A small cafe not far from the courthouse. When I walked in, he was already there. Older. Smaller. Not powerful like he used to look. When he thought I belonged to him. He stood up when he saw me. Then he sat back down. "You really meant it," he said. "Everything in that letter." "I did," I replied. He looked at his hands. "I didn't think it would go this far," he said. "I thought you'd never find out." That's when I understood something important. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry. Didn't work. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. "I loved you," I said calmly. "I still do. In a different way." He looked up at me then. Eyes glassy. "So this is it?" he asked. "You're just walking away?" I took a slow breath. "No," I said. "I walked away the day you decided. I was easier to erase than to respect." We sat there in silence. For a long time. Finally he spoke again. "What happens now?" I stood up. "Now," I said. "I live." Paid for my coffee. Not his. And I left. That was the last time I saw my son. I moved out of the house a few months later. Not because it hurt, but because I wanted something new. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere honest. I planted a garden. I woke up without fear. I learned that peace is louder than revenge. People still ask me how I survived something like that. I tell them the truth. I survived because I stopped begging for love from people who only loved what I could give them. If you're still listening, remember this. Family is not defined by blood. It's defined by who protects you when you're most vulnerable. And sometimes, walking away forever is the bravest thing you'll ever do. People think the story ended the day I walked out of that cafe. Didn't. That was just the day I stopped carrying someone else's shame. Months passed quietly. No cameras. No headlines. No voices telling me who I was supposed to be. Just mornings with sunlight. Evenings with books my husband once loved. And a small house near the coast, where no one knew my last name. For the first time in decades, I made decisions without asking permission. What to eat. Where to go. Who deserved my time. Sometimes late at night, the memories still came. The funeral. Laughter. The sound of my own son saying, I lived too long. I won't lie to you. Healing isn't forgetting. It's remembering. Without bleeding. One afternoon I received a message. From a woman I didn't know. She wrote, your story gave me the courage to leave a family that was hurting me. I thought I was alone. I read that message 3 times. Then I cried. Not from pain. From meaning. Because maybe surviving wasn't the point. Maybe speaking was. I started volunteering quietly. Helping elderly women understand their rights. Teaching them one simple truth. Love should never require silence. I never spoke my son's name again. Not out of hate. But because some chapters don't deserve rereading. On my birthday this year, I lit a candle for myself. Not to wish for anything. But to thank the woman who chose to live when it would have been easier to disappear. If you've listened this far, I want you to hear this clearly. If someone treats you like you're disposable, walk away. Not loudly. Not with revenge. Just walk away. With your dignity intact. 'Cause sometimes, the bravest ending is choosing yourself.